Welcome to Sci-Fi Stories Beyond, where we create the best HFY full sci-fi stories in the known galaxy. We explore more mature, graphic and sexualized themes and add them to our sci-fi stories. Viewer discretion is advised. The air crackled with tension as I stood face to face with the Zaethian Empress Azalea in her private chambers aboard the alien mothership. Her bioluminescent eyes appraised me with a mix of curiosity and raw hunger. "Welcome, Ambassador Deacons," Azalea purred, her melodic voice sending shivers down my spine. "I trust your journey was stimulating?" I fought to maintain my composure, all too aware of the way Azalea's diaphanous gown clung to her lithe blue form. I was here on a diplomatic mission, the first human to make contact with the Zaethians, but the Empress clearly had more intimate activities in mind. "Empress Azalea," I bowed slightly, "I am honored to be here as a representative of Earth and to learn more about your fascinating culture." Azalea laughed, a throaty sound that made my heart race. She circled me slowly, trailing a slender finger across my shoulders. "Learn. Oh, we have much to teach each other, Ambassador. I think you'll find our ways of sharing knowledge quite different from your human customs." She leaned in close, her lips brushing my ear as she whispered, "I look forward to a very deep cultural exchange." Before I could respond, the chamber doors slid open and three more breathtaking Zaethian women glided in, the Empress advisors, each radiating sensuality and power. "Meet Tamara, my chief scientist, Kizuri, my high priestess, and Zafira, the head of my honor guard. They will be overseeing your orientation." The women eyed me appreciatively, their gazes roaming my chiseled features and trim physique. I suddenly felt like a prize on display, an exotic specimen for their perusal. Azalea clapped her hands. "Let the rituals begin. Tonight we toast our new alliance and indoctrinate dear Tobin in the time-honored traditions of Zaethian diplomacy." As attendants flooded in bearing trays of strange delicacies and shimmering drinks, I took a fortifying breath. I had a feeling this would be a first-contact experience unlike any in human history. The next few days passed in a dizzying whirlwind of Zaethian pleasures and customs. From sensual banquets where I was the centerpiece, to tours of fantastical alien gardens designed to heighten the senses, every experience was laced with a heady eroticism that left me reeling. Yet beneath the veneer of seduction, I sensed an undercurrent of calculated coldness, a deliberate effort to overwhelm and manipulate me. The Zaethians were masters of using sex and desire as tools of persuasion and control. And holy hell, it was working. I found myself being paraded through grand halls filled with Zaethian nobility, their appreciative stares raking over my form like I was a prized pet. In the evenings, I was entertained by the Empress advisors, each one determined to personally school me in the arts of Zaethian lovemaking. It was maddening, trying to cling to my wits amidst the onslaught of sensual delights. Tamara, with her razor-sharp intellect, engaged me in dizzying philosophical discussions even as her deft fingers traced maddening patterns on my thighs under the dinner table. Kizuri, the enigmatic priestess, led me through strange meditation rituals that left my body thrumming and my mind foggy with need. And Zafira, the fierce warrior, challenged me to sparring matches that always ended with us tangled together, skin slick with sweat and pheromones. It would have been so damn easy to surrender to it entirely, to drown in the pleasure they offered and never look back. But I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't right, that this was all a carefully orchestrated game, and I was just a pawn being maneuvered into place. In stolen moments of clarity, I tried to dig beneath the surface, to understand the true nature of Zaethian society. I managed to corner Tamara in a misty arboretum, the closest thing I could find to a neutral space on this damned ship. "Why do your people repress emotion?" I asked her point blank. "What are you all so afraid of?" Tamara regarded me coolly, but I caught a fleeting flicker of something in her eyes before she shuddered it away. "Regret, longing, emotion is chaos," she replied flatly. "It clouds judgment, impedes progress. We Zaethians evolved beyond such primitive impulses long ago." I shook my head in disbelief. "But emotion is what makes us alive. Passion, empathy, love, they're not weaknesses. They're the very things that drive us to reach for the stars, to forge connections. Can't you see that?" Tamara stiffened, a subtle tremble in her throat as she swallowed hard. "You don't understand," she whispered harshly. "The price we paid for our perfection, the things we gave up." She turned abruptly and strode away, leaving me more frustrated and intrigued than ever. I was starting to suspect that beneath the cold, flawless veneer of Zaethian society, something raw and desperate was straining to break free. And I was damned if I wasn't going to get to the bottom of it. The mystery only deepened when Azalea summoned me to her chamber's late one-night cycle. She greeted me draped across a divan, clad in wisps of silk that left absolutely nothing to the imagination. "Tobin," she drawled, beckoning me closer with a crooked finger. "My advisors tell me you've been quite the apt pupil in our ways. I think it's time for you to graduate to the next level." I approached warily, my stomach twisting with equal parts desire and unease. And what exactly does that entail? Quick as a striking snake, Azalea grabbed me and pulled me down on top of her. I gasped as my skin met hers, a shock like static electricity arcing between us. Her eyes burned into mine, swirling with eerie luminescence that a psychic union. She breathed against my lips, opening your mind completely to mine as we merge our bodies. The deepest form of Zaethian bonding. I jerked back instinctively, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was too much, too fast. I needed to keep a clear head. Damn it. But Azalea's hands were already roaming my body, her touch searing through the thin fabric of my uniform. "Don't fight it, Tobin," she coaxed, her voice a seductive purr. "Imagine what we could achieve together, your human passion and my Zaethian power. We could forge an alliance that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy." I don't. I stammered, my resistance crumbling under the hot press of her curves. I wanted her. God help me. I wanted her so bad it made me shake. But this... It felt wrong, like a violation masquerading as ecstasy. Azalea's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You still cling to your human hang-ups. Love, what a quaint concept." She spat the word like it was poison. "If you want to play a part on the galactic stage, Tobin, it's time to grow up." Her nails dug into my shoulders as she tried to pull me into a bruising kiss. I planted my hands on either side of her head and wrenched myself away with a snarl. "No!" I growled, my breath coming ragged. "Not like this. I came here to forge an alliance, not whore myself out." I stumbled backwards, putting some much-needed distance between us. Azalea sat up slowly, sly triumph spreading across her face even as my rejection hung in the air. "Oh, Tobin," she sighed, "you'll change your tune, sooner or later. The question is, how much will you lose in the process?" She stretched languorously, a satisfied smirk playing about her lips. "You may go for now, but know that the game has only just begun." Shaking with a toxic mix of lust and fury, I turned on my heel and stalked from the chamber. Her mocking laughter chased me down the corridor. As I marched back to my quarters, my mind raced to make sense of it all. The Zaethians weren't just trying to seduce me. They were trying to break me, to twist me into a willing puppet. But beneath the ice and the manipulations, I'd glimpsed slivers of real longing, of a desperation for something more than this empty existence. If I was going to complete my mission and get the hell off this pleasure-soaked ship with my sanity intact, I needed to find out the truth behind the Zaethian facade. And I had a good feeling that tomorrow was the key. I took a deep breath as I palmed open the door to my suite, already plotting my next move. Sleep could wait, because now, it was the Zaethians' turn to learn that we humans have some arts of our own. And Tobin Deacons Jr. doesn't go down without a fight. I didn't sleep a wink that night, my mind churning with the implications of Azalea's little offer. The Zaethians clearly had an agenda, and seduction was just another weapon in their arsenal. But I'd be damned if I let them play me like a cheap fiddle. The next morning, I marched into the ship's commissary with a renewed sense of purpose. I needed allies, and fast. I scanned the room until I spotted Tamara, her head bent over a data pad as she absently stirred her drink. I slid into the seat across from her, flashing my most disarming smile. "Fancy meeting you here, gorgeous. Mind if I join you?" Tamara's head snapped up, her eyes widening in surprise before narrowing in suspicion. "Ambassador Deacons, I wouldn't have thought you'd be up and about so early, considering." She trailed off, arching a knowing brow. I leaned forward, dropping my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Considering the Empress just tried to mindfuck me into submission. Yeah, it's been a hell of a night." Tamara flinched, her gaze darting around nervously. "You shouldn't speak of such things so openly," she hissed. "The walls have ears." "Then maybe we should take this conversation somewhere more private," I suggested, cocking my head toward the door. "I have a feeling you and I have a lot to talk about." Tamara hesitated, caught between fear and curiosity. Finally, she gave a curt nod and rose to her feet. "Follow me." She led me through a dizzying maze of corridors, finally ducking into what appeared to be a small, dimly lit chapel. Strange symbols adorned the walls, glowing softly in the gloom. Tamara turned to face me, her arms crossed defensively over her chest. "All right, Ambassador. Talk." I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Tamara, I know there's more going on here than meets the eye. The Empress, the rituals, the way you all suppress your emotions. It's not natural. Something happened to your people, didn't it? Something you're all afraid to face. Tamara's jaw clenched, her eyes glittering with unshed tears. You don't know what you're talking about, she whispered hoarsely. The price we paid for perfection. You couldn't possibly understand. I reached out and grasped her shoulders, feeling the tension thrumming through her body. Then help me understand, I pleaded softly. I want to help you, Tamara, but I can't do that unless I know the truth. For a long moment, Tamara stared at me, her expression trapped between longing and terror. Then, with a shuddering sigh, she stepped back and bowed her head. Once, long ago, we Zaethians were not so different from you humans, she began, her voice barely audible. We loved, we laughed, we dreamed, but our emotions were also our downfall. She raised her head, fixing me with a haunted gaze. Our passion fueled terrible wars, tore families apart, drove us to the brink of self-annihilation. In desperation, our ancestors sought a way to end the cycle of suffering, and they found it. Through genetic engineering and psychic conditioning, they stripped away our capacity for deep feeling, leaving only cold logic and the pursuit of pleasure. Tamara let out a bitter laugh. And it worked. After a fashion, we rebuilt our society, expanded our empire, achieved heights of scientific progress undreamed of. But the cost? She shook her head. We lost something essential, the very spark that made us alive. I felt a lump form in my throat as the pieces clicked into place. And now, some of you are starting to remember what it was like before, to feel the echoes of all you gave up. Yes, Tamara whispered, but to admit it is to court madness, or so we're told. The Empress and her inner circle, they'll go to any lengths to maintain the status quo, even if it means sacrificing our very souls on the altar of obedience. I stepped closer, cupping Tamara's face gently in my hands. It doesn't have to be like this, I urged. You can reclaim your emotions, your identities. Learn to integrate them in a healthy way. I'll help you. Tamara leaned into my touch for the briefest of moments before pulling away, her expression hardening. You still don't understand the danger. If the Empress even suspects I've told you these things, let me worry about Azalea, I said firmly. I'm not just some doe-eyed piece of ass for her to bat around. I'm a goddamn ambassador, and I have resources of my own. Tamara looked torn. Why do you care so much? Why risk yourself for people you barely know? I gave her a crooked smile. Let's just say I've got a thing for lost causes, and I don't like bullies, no matter how good they might look in a negligee. That startled a laugh out of Tamara, and I counted it as a victory. Look, I continued, I'm not naive enough to think I can single-handedly change your whole society overnight. But if there are others like you who yearn for something more, I don't know, maybe we can start a little revolution of our own. Tamara gnawed at her lower lip. I could practically see the gears turning in that brilliant mind of hers. Finally, she gave a slow nod. I may know of a few who would be sympathetic to the cause, but we'll have to be cautious. If the Empress catches wind of this, don't worry, gorgeous. Subtlety is my middle name. I winked, and Tamara rolled her eyes. Why do I get the feeling that's a bald-faced lie? But there was a glimmer of amusement beneath the snark, and maybe even a flicker of hope. You wound me, darling. I clutched my chest and microphone. I'll have you know I can be as stealthy as a cat when I want to be. A tomcat in heat, maybe, Tamara muttered. I gasped in delight. Why Tamara? Was that an actual human idiom? Careful, or you might just start to like me after all. She huffed and shoved at my shoulder, but I could have sworn I saw the corners of her lips twitch. Don't flatter yourself, Ambassador. You're still an arrogant, undisciplined pain in my ass. I waggled my eyebrows. Is that an invitation? Tamara's cheeks flushed a fascinating shade of purple, but before she could tear me a new one, the chapel doors burst open. Zephyra stood framed in the entrance, her massive sword slung over one shoulder. Ambassador Deacons, she barked, the Empress requests your presence. Immediately, I shot Tamara a warning glance before pasting on my best shit-eating grin. But of course, mustn't keep her royal hotness waiting. As I sauntered past Zephyra, I could feel Tamara's gaze boring into my back. I just prayed I hadn't doomed us both with my devil-may-care bravado. The summons was, as expected, a thinly veiled power play disguised as a debriefing. Azalea lounged on her throne, picking at a tray of delicacies as she grilled me about my progress in understanding Zaethian culture. I kept my responses vague and faintly obsequious, playing the part of the eager student, but Azalea's eyes glittered dangerously, and I knew she suspected something was amiss. Tell me, Tobin, she said silkily, popping a vivid red berry between her lips. What have you learned of our history? The events that shaped us into the people we are now. I chose my words like a soldier picking through a minefield. I understand that your ancestors faced great strife, and that the choices they made were in the interest of survival. But cultures can evolve, can't they? Surely there's room for growth. Azalea's fingers tightened around the arm of her throne. There are some things best left in the past, Ambassador. Some doors that, once closed, should never be reopened. I dipped my head, feigning chastened agreement. Of course, Empress. Forgive my presumption. But inside, my mind was racing. How many of her own people had Azalea silenced in the name of preserving the status quo? How deep did the rot go? I needed more information, and I needed it fast. But as I made my excuses and slipped from the throne room, I couldn't shake the crawling sensation between my shoulder blades. I was walking a razor's edge, and one wrong step could send me tumbling into an abyss. The next few days were a nerve-wracking blur of clandestine meetings and close calls. With Tamara's help, I made contact with a handful of other Zaethians who harbored secret doubts about the Empress rule. We met in darkened corners and in used cargo bays, swapping whispers of a time when their people knew laughter and sorrow in equal measure. But even as our little resistance grew, so did the danger. Zafira and her goons seemed to dog my every step, their suspicious glares boring into the back of my head. And Kizari, the high priestess, watched me with an unsettling intensity, as if she could divine my treasonous thoughts through willpower alone. It all came to a head when Tamara failed to show up for one of our meetings. I waited for hours, my gut churning with dread, before I finally admitted defeat and crept back to my quarters. Only to find the Empress herself waiting for me, a cruel smile playing about her lips. Going somewhere, pet. My heart lodged in my throat as I took in the scene. My room had been ransacked, every drawer emptied and bit of furniture appended. And there, kneeling at the foot of the bed, was Tamara, her wrists bound behind her back and her face a mask of terror. Tobin, Azalea purred, stalking toward me with predatory grace. Imagine my surprise when I learned that my chief scientist had been keeping secrets, and that those secrets led straight back to you. I raised my chin, struggling to keep my voice steady. If you've heard her, I swear to God. Heard her? Azalea laughed, a chilling sound. Oh, darling, the fun hasn't even begun. She seized a fistful of Tamara's hair, wrenching her head back. But it will, unless... I swallowed hard, my hands balling into fists at my sides. Unless what? Azalea's smile was pure venom. Unless you give me what I want. And I think you know exactly what that is. The world seemed to tilt crazily on its axis as the full weight of Azalea's threats crashed over me. In that moment, I knew with bone-deep certainty that the Zaethian Empress would not hesitate to destroy Tamara, along with any other would-be rebels, in order to secure my obedience. Bile scorched my throat as I stared into Tamara's wide, pleading eyes. The idea of surrendering myself to Azalea's perverse desires made my skin crawl. But could I really stand by and watch her torture, or kill, an innocent woman for the supposed sins of her ancestors? I closed my eyes, dragging in a ragged breath. Could I sacrifice my principles, my very identity, on the altar of the greater good? Could I become the plaything of a tyrant, even if it meant saving countless lives in the process? I opened my eyes to find Azalea watching me intently, triumph already glittering in the depths of her gaze. She knew she had me cornered, and the bitch was savoring every second of it. Well, pet? She crooned, trailing one lacquered nail down the curve of Tamara's cheek. What will it be? The word tasted like ashes on my tongue, but I forced it out through gritted teeth. Deal. I would play Azalea's game, become her toy and her tool. But only until I found a way to break her, once and for all. Here's Arc 3 of the story, continuing in Tobin's point of view. Please note this arc contains mature themes and language. Arc 3, I'd always considered myself a man of principles. A champion of truth, justice, and the American way, or whatever the hell the intergalactic equivalent was. I'd never once compromised my morals, never let myself be used as a means to an end. But as I knelt before Empress Azalea, my head bowed and my dignity in tatters, I realized that there were no easy choices in war. And make no mistake, that's exactly what this was, a war for the very soul of the Zaethian people. Good pet, Azalea purred, trailing her fingers through my hair in a mockery of affection. I knew you'd see reason, given the proper motivation. I bit back the urge to spit in her smug face, keeping my eyes fixed on the floor. I had to play this smart. One wrong move, and Tamara's blood would be on my hands.
Speaking of Tamara, I risked a glance in her direction, my heart clenching at the sight of her huddled on the bed, her wrists chafed raw from her bonds. She met my gaze, and the message in her eyes was clear. Don't do this. Not for me. But what choice did I have? I couldn't let Azalea hurt her, couldn't let our budding resistance be snuffed out before it even had a chance to grow, if that meant sacrificing my pride and my principles on the altar of necessity. Well, it wouldn't be the first time I'd taken one for the team. Azalea must have sensed the direction of my thoughts, because her grip tightened in my hair, forcing my head back. Eyes on me. Ambassador, she said silkily, you belong to me now, understand? Body, mind, and soul. I swallowed hard, mustering up a nod. I understand, Empress. She smiled, a cold, reptilian thing. Good. Then let's begin. The next few weeks passed in a haze of humiliation and quiet desperation. By day, I played the part of the Empress's devoted consort, attending her at court and in her private chambers. I endured her touches and her taunts, her casual cruelties and her whispered threats. But by night, I plotted and schemed with Tamara and the other rebels, meeting in secret to share what scraps of information we could glean. It wasn't much, a rumor here, a scrap of ancient history there, but slowly, painstakingly, a picture began to emerge.
We learned of the Great Purge that had followed the Zaethians' genetic restructuring. Our entire bloodlines had been wiped out for failing to conform to the new order. We heard whispers of a hidden cache of pre-purge artifacts, relics of a time when the Zaethians had embraced the full spectrum of emotion. And most intriguingly of all, we discovered references to a mysterious figure known only as the Outcast, a Zaethian who had supposedly fled the Empire generations ago, spurning the Empress's rule and her vision of cold perfection. It wasn't much to go on, but it was a start. If we could find this outcast, if we could learn the secrets they had taken with them, maybe, just maybe, we'd have a chance at bringing Azalea down and restoring the Zaethians' lost humanity. But first, I had to survive my new role as the Empress's plaything, and that was proving to be a taller order than I'd anticipated. It wasn't just the physical demands, though those were certainly taxing enough. Azalea's appetites were as voracious as they were depraved, and she delighted in pushing me to my limits and beyond. No, the real challenge was maintaining my sense of self in the face of her relentless campaign to break me. She chipped away at my defenses with every poisoned word, every calculated caress. She whispered in my ear as she took her pleasure, telling me how I was nothing more than a toy, a disposable pawn in her grand game, how I would never be anything more than what she allowed me to be. And in my weakest moments, I almost believed her, almost let myself slip beneath the dark waters of despair, almost resigned myself to a life of empty servitude. But then I would catch Tamara's eye across a crowded room, see the fire still burning in her gaze despite everything she'd endured. Or I'd feel the weight of the tiny data chip hidden in the hollow of my collarbone, the one that contained everything we'd managed to scrape together about the outcast and their possible whereabouts. And I'd remember why I was doing this, what I was fighting for. I was fighting for Tamara, for the chance to see her smile without fear. I was fighting for all the Zaethians who longed to feel, to love, to be fully alive. And most of all, I was fighting for myself, for the man I knew I could be, if only I had the strength to endure. So I endured. I played Azalea's games and danced to her twisted tune. I let her think she was winning, that she was molding me into her perfect, obedient creature. But all the while, I was watching, waiting, biding my time until the moment was right to strike. That moment came sooner than I could have anticipated. Azalea, flushed with the thrill of victory, grew careless. She let slip a vital piece of information, the location of the pre-purge artifacts, hidden away in a secure bunker deep beneath the capital city. IT was the break we'd been waiting for, the key to unraveling the whole damn mess. If we could just get our hands on those artifacts, understand the truths they contained. But it wouldn't be easy. The bunker was heavily guarded, both by Azalea's loyal soldiers and by cutting-edge security systems. It would take all of our combined skills and knowledge to even stand a chance of breaking in. Fortunately, I had an ace up my sleeve, or rather, a highly trained saboteur and assassin. Zafira, the head of Azalea's honor guard, had been watching me with an unnerving intensity ever since I'd become the Empress's pet. I'd assumed it was suspicion, or maybe jealousy. I was wrong. It was something far more dangerous, and far more useful. Zafira cornered me one night after a particularly grueling session with Azalea. I was bruised and aching, my throat raw from screaming, and all I wanted was to crawl into my bed and pass out. But the Zaethian warrior had other ideas. "I know what you're doing," she said without preamble, backing me up against the wall. "I know about your little rebellion, about the outcast." My heart stuttered in my chest, but I forced myself to meet her gaze head-on. "I don't know what you're talking about." Zephyra's lips curled in a humorless smile. "Don't play dumb, Ambassador. It doesn't suit you." She leaned in close, her breath hot against my ear. "I want in." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "You." "What?" "You heard me." Zephyra pulled back, folding her arms across her chest. "I'm sick of being Azalea's lapdog, sick of watching her twist our people into something monstrous. I want to help you bring her down." I stared at her, hardly daring to believe my luck. With Zephyra on our side, we might actually have a shot at pulling this off, but I had to be sure. "Why now?" I asked, my voice rough. "Why trust me with this?" Something flickered in Zephyra's eyes, something raw and pained. "Because you're the first person I've seen stand up to her," she said quietly. "The first person to make me believe that maybe, just maybe, there's another way, a better way." I swallowed hard, a lump forming in my throat. "Okay," I said at last. "Okay, let's do this." And so the plan was hatched. Zephyra would use her clearance to get us into the bunker, while Tamara and I would grab the artifacts and any other intel we could get our hands on. The other rebels would create a distraction, drawing Azalea's attention away from the real prize. It was risky as hell, but it was the only shot we had. And as I lay awake that night, staring up at the unfamiliar stars through my viewport, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope. For the first time since I'd set foot on this godforsaken ship, I believed we could win. Believed that I could be more than Azalea's plaything, more than a pawn in some cosmic game. I could be a hero, a liberator, a beacon of light in the darkness. And come hell or high water, that's exactly what I intended to be. The night of the heist was a moonless one, the inky blackness broken only by the faint gleam of distant stars. I stood on the edge of the palace grounds, my heart hammering against my ribs as I waited for Zephyra's signal. Beside me, Tamara was a silent shadow, her face set in lines of grim determination. We'd barely had a moment alone together since Azalea had discovered our affair, but the unspoken connection between us thrummed like a living thing. A flicker of light caught my eye. 3 quick flashes, then darkness. Zephyra. It was time. I squeezed Tamara's hand, feeling her fingers tremble in mine. "Ready?" I breathed. She nodded, jaw tight, as I'll ever be. Together, we slipped into the night, darting from shadow to shadow as we made our way towards the bunker entrance. The palace guards were out in force, their eyes sharp and their weapons at the ready, but we'd planned for that. In the distance, a sudden explosion rocked the ground, followed by shouts of alarm. The rebels had begun their distraction right on cue. I just prayed it would be enough. We reached the bunker door just as Zephyra emerged from the shadows, her face a grim mask in the dim light. "Hurry," she hissed, keying the access code with swift, sure movements. "We don't have much time." The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a narrow corridor bathed in sinister red light. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment settle on my shoulders like a physical thing. This was it, the point of no return. I glanced at Tamara and Zephyra, seeing my own determination reflected back at me in their eyes. We were really doing this. We were going to change the course of an entire civilization, or die trying. Together, we plunged into the bunker, our footsteps echoing off the metal walls with an eerie finality. The corridor curved and twisted, leading us deeper and deeper into the bowels of the earth. And then, suddenly, we were there. The chamber was vast, easily the size of a football stadium, its walls lined with row upon row of glowing stasis pods. And in the center, on a raised dais, was the object of our quest, the pre-purge artifacts. I approached the dais with cautious reverence, my breath catching in my throat as I got my first good look at the relics. They were like nothing I'd ever seen before, a collection of strange, organic-looking devices that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Tamara let out a soft sound of wonder, her eyes wide. "Tobin, these are..." "I think these are memory matrices, repositories of Zaethian knowledge and history from before the purge." I reached out to touch one, feeling a strange tingle dance up my arm as my fingertips brushed its surface. "Can you access them?" "Download the data?" Tamara bit her lip, already pulling a compact hacking rig from her belt. "I can try, but we need to hurry." Once Azalea realizes what we're up to. She didn't need to finish the thought. We all knew the stakes. I stood guard as Tamara worked, my heart in my throat and my hand on my blaster. Zafira prowled the perimeter of the chamber, her enhanced senses straining for any hint of trouble. But trouble found us anyway. The attack came out of nowhere. One moment, the chamber was silent save for the hum of Tamara's equipment and our own harsh breathing. The next, the far wall exploded inward in a hail of shattered metal and scorched composites. And through the smoke and rubble strode Azalea herself, flanked by a dozen heavily armed guards. Well, the Empress purred, her voice dripping with malice. What have we here? A little rebellion, fomenting right under my nose? I stepped forward, placing myself squarely between her and Tamara. It's over, Azalea, I said, my voice ringing with a conviction I hardly felt. We know the truth now. We know what you've done to your people. Azalea's eyes flashed with a mad light. I've done what was necessary. She snarled. I've ensured our survival, our superiority. And I won't let a bunch of mewling, sentimental fools drag us back into the muck of emotion and chaos. Beside me, Zafira let out a low growl, her sword leaping into her hand. You're wrong, Empress. Emotion isn't weakness. It's what makes us alive. It's what gives us the strength to fight for what we believe in. Azalea's lip curled in a sneer. Oh, my dear Zafira, you disappoint me. I thought you, of all people, would understand the necessity of sacrifice. Zafira squared her shoulders, her eyes hard. I used to, but not anymore. And with that, she charged, a silver blur of deadly intent. The guards swarmed to meet her, and then all hell broke loose. I lost track of the individual fights, lost track of everything but the burn of my muscles and the scream of blaster fire. I fought like a man possessed, all the rage and frustration and helplessness of the past months pouring out of me in a torrent of violence. At some point, Tamara's voice rose above the chaos, raw and triumphant. I've got it! I've got the data! I whirled, hope surging in my chest, only to see Azalea bearing down on Tamara, her eyes wild and her blaster aimed squarely at my lover's heart. And no! The scream tore from my throat, raw and ragged. I lunged, throwing myself between them just as Azalea's finger tightened on the trigger. The world exploded into pain, into searing, blinding agony. I felt the impact of the blaster bolt like a punch to the chest, felt my knees give way beneath me. But I also saw Azalea stagger back, saw the bloom of crimson on her pale robes. Zafira stood over her, sword dripping and face grim. It was over. We'd won. I tried to smile, tried to speak, but my voice wouldn't cooperate. The world was going gray around the edges, the pain fading into a cottony distance. The last thing I saw was Tamara's face, streaked with tears and twisted with anguish. I wanted to tell her it was okay, that it was worth it. I wanted to tell her I loved her, but the darkness rose up to claim me, and I knew no more. I awoke to the sound of soft, steady beeping, the smell of antiseptic sharp in my nostrils. For a moment, I couldn't place my surroundings. The last thing I remembered was the bunker, the fight, the searing pain of Azalea's blaster bolt slamming into my chest. Tobin? A voice, achingly familiar, cut through the fog in my brain. Tobin, can you hear me? I blinked, wincing against the bright lights overhead. Tamara? I croaked, my throat dry and scratchy. She was at my side in an instant, her hand warm in mine, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Oh, thank the stars, she breathed. We weren't sure you were going to make it. I struggled to sit up, gritting my teeth against the flare of pain in my chest. What? What happened? The artifacts, the data. We got it, Tamara assured me, her smile tremulous. It's over, Tobin. Azalea is dead. The rebellion. We won. I stared at her, hardly daring to believe it. We'd done it. Against all odds, we'd broken the Empress's stranglehold on her people, had opened the door to a new future for the Zaethians. But even as relief and joy surged through me, a nagging doubt pricked at the back of my mind. Something about this felt off, somehow. Too easy, too neat. I shook my head, wincing at the spike of pain behind my eyes. I was just being paranoid. Surely, Tamara wouldn't lie to me, not after everything we'd been through together. Would she? The thought was like a splash of icy water, shocking me fully awake. I looked at Tamara, really looked at her, and felt my blood run cold. Her eyes, They were wrong. The vibrant gold I'd come to know and love was gone, replaced by a flat, lifeless brown, and her smile. It was just a little too wide, a little too fixed. "You're not Tamara," I said, my voice shaking. "What the hell is going on? Where am I?" The thing wearing Tamara's face cocked its head, its smile never wavering. "Very good, Ambassador Deacons. I must admit, I'm impressed. Not many can see through our illusions." Illusions. The word sent a chill down my spine, pieces clicking into place with sickening speed. The mission, the Zaethians, Azalea. None of it had been real. "Who are you?" I demanded, my heart hammering against my ribs. "What do you want from me?" The false Tamara shimmered, its form distorting and stretching until a new figure stood in its place, tall and slender, with skin the color of polished silver and eyes that glowed an eerie, electric blue. "We are the Whisper," the creature said, its voice a melodic thrum that seemed to resonate in my very bones. "And you, Tobin Deacons, are our greatest experiment yet." I stared, my mind reeling. The Whisper. I'd heard of them, of course, ghostly aliens said to haunt the fringes of known space, creatures of mist and shadow that could slip into your mind and mold your very thoughts to their will. But I'd always dismissed the stories as just that, stories, myths and legends with no basis in reality. Oh, how wrong I'd been. An experiment, I repeated numbly. All of this. It was a lie? Some kind of twisted test? The Whisper inclined its head, in a manner of speaking. "We have been watching your kind for a long time, Tobin Deacons, studying you. Humans are fascinating to us. Your passions, your contradictions, your incredible capacity for both cruelty and compassion." It began to pace, its movements fluid and hypnotic. "We wanted to understand what makes a hero. What drives some of you to put the needs of others before your own, to fight and bleed and die for a cause greater than yourselves. And you, Ambassador. You were the perfect test subject." Bile rose in my throat as the full scope of the deception crashed over me. The Zaethians. Azalea, Tamara, Zafira. They weren't real, were they? Just puppets, played by you. Facades, the Whisper agreed. Masks, worn by our agents. We crafted the perfect scenario to push you to your limits, to see how far you would go for love, for duty, for hope. I closed my eyes, hot tears leaking from beneath my lids. It had all felt so real, the struggle, the heartache, the desperate, clawing need to be more, to mean something, but in the end, it was just another lie. Why? I asked, my voice cracking. Why me? The Whisper was silent for a long moment. Then, softly, "Because you were special, Tobin Deacons. From the moment we first touched your mind, we knew you had the potential for true greatness, and we were right." It leaned forward, its glowing eyes boring into mine. "You sacrificed everything for a people not your own. You found the strength to keep fighting, even when all hope seemed lost. And in the end, you laid down your life for love, for the chance at a better future." The Whisper straightened, something like awe in its alien features. "You, Ambassador, are a true hero, and that is a rare and wondrous thing indeed." I stared at the creature, a strange, hollow feeling taking root in my chest. A hero. It called me a hero, but I had never felt less like one. Everything I'd done, every choice I'd made, it had all been for nothing. Just a game, a twisted experiment played out for the amusement of an alien intelligence. But even as despair threatened to swallow me whole, a small, stubborn spark flickered to life in my heart. So what if it had been a lie? The emotions, the convictions that had driven me, those had been real. I had been real. And maybe, in the end, that was enough. I met the Whisper's gaze, my jaw tight and my eyes hard. "Send me back," I said. The creature blinked, clearly taken aback. "Back?" "To Earth, to my life. My real life. I'm done being your lab rat." "But you could be so much more." The Whisper protested. "With our guidance, our technology, you could become a true force for change in the galaxy." I shook my head. "I'll make my own destiny. Thanks. And I'll do it as a human, flaws and all." The Whisper studied me for a long, long moment. Then, slowly, it smiled. A true smile this time. tinged with something almost like respect. As you wish. Ambassador. It raised a hand, long fingers splayed, and the world dissolved into shimmering silver mist. I woke to sunlight on my face, to the sound of birdsong and the distant hum of traffic. For a moment, I simply lay there, blinking up at the familiar ceiling of my bedroom. Had it all been a dream? Some fevered hallucination, born of too much stress and too little sleep? But even as the thought crossed my mind, I knew it wasn't true. The ache in my chest, the weariness in my bones. They were real. The whisper, the Zaethians, all of it. It had happened. I was a different man than I had been when I first set foot on that alien ship. Stronger, wiser, and infinitely more scarred. But I was alive, and I had a second chance, a fresh start. I rose from my bed, moving to the window and gazing out at the bustling city below. My city, my world. The future stretched out before me, vast and unknowable and full of promise. And I knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that I would face it as I had faced the trials of the Whisper, with courage, with compassion, and with an unshakable determination to be a light in the darkness. My name is Tobin Deacons. I am a diplomat, an explorer, a man who has seen the very best and the very worst that the universe has to offer. But above all, I am human, flawed and fallible, but also brave and kind and so very, very strong. And that, in the end, is my greatest power, my truest destiny. I will not waste this chance, this precious gift of life and hope. I will take the lessons I learned in the Whisper's illusion, the courage and conviction that carried me through the darkest of times. And I will use them to build a better reality, not as a puppet or a pawn, dancing to an alien tune, but as a man, making his own choices, forging his own path. It won't be easy. The scars on my heart, the shadows in my mind. They are deep and they are real, but I have to believe that I am stronger than my traumas, greater than my griefs. I have to believe that, in the end, love and hope will always triumph over fear and despair, and so I will walk forward into the light, into the beautiful, terrible, endlessly astonishing world that awaits me. I will live, and I will fight, and I will never, ever stop trying to be the hero that the Whisper saw in me. Not because some alien intelligence wills it, but because I choose it, because I am Tobin Deacons, ambassador, explorer, and human, now and forever. And that is enough, more than enough. It is everything.